Hello, this is the non-dual lectionary for the first Sunday in Lent, year A, and we're kicking off with actually it's the same story as year C, last year's first Sunday in Lent. In year C, it was the account from Luke. Here we've got the account from Matthew, but the story is essentially the same. Nevertheless, this is one of those times when I think it's worth addressing again. I'll try to take a slightly different take on it, but the core lesson is just so good. So let's go right to it. It is Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tested by the devil. And I'll actually pause there. This is after his baptism, when uh, the skies open and he hears, "This is my son with whom I am well pleased." So then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tested by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to them, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. So the core of the story, I think, is the same as what we talked about for Luke's version of it, which is, Jesus has this waking up experience at his baptism, and one of the next things that happens is um, a testing of sorts, right? And this is told in the mythological way of, like, he's let out in order to be tested, but reality, the universe does this for us. I mean, no matter what waking up experience you have, and it doesn't even have to be like a non-dual waking up experience. It can be a smaller thing, but it's going to be put to the test just by interacting with the world. Like how much is this important? How important is this to you compared to the normal things that are important to you, right? Are your, usual wants and needs and all the things that your psychological self, your small self grabs onto, are those still going to be more important? And so, um, in one way, that's what this story is all about, right? Is just a mythological telling of, like, some of the major ways. And, last year I talked about, wealth, power, and status, and that's all in here. But some of the major ways, right, that we just always will have this in front of us, which is what's really important. And it's not even like a message of, you should decide ahead of time, right? Because it's more like you're going to find out, is this what's important or not? Um, what is your answer going to be? And so, yeah, I'll link that last year's video in the comments again. I stand by all of that. And it's not just from me, it's from everybody that came before. And I think I referenced some people and their take on the story in that video. But I do want to focus on one other thing, sort of a new thing to bring out here, I think, which is um, the back and forth between, the devil, Satan, the tempter, and Jesus is all in terms of scripture, right? And there's one way in which, like, we can read it at the surface level of just being, oh, Jesus has the right answers, and the point here is to have the right answers. Um, but if we peel back just a little bit, right, the devil keeps saying, "Hey, look, scripture says, you'll command angels if you're the real one," or, uh, like, Jesus keeps coming back with scripture himself, but the point isn't to be able to reference scripture for what you do, right? The devil does it too. which is really important there. And that comes back to that three-legged stool that Rohr talks about again, right? Experience, scripture, and tradition. Because if you're going scripture alone, you can point to anything to justify anything you want, right? And same thing with experience. You can point to anything in your experience. You can probably find something in the tradition, but when they're resonating with each other, right, is where at least there's the possibility that something is really moving, moving with life there, I would say. Um, so in any event, it's you know, it's Satan or the devil or whatever you want to call it here, right? I like the idea of just reality, right? Reality showing up and not in a way of saying like, hey, leave behind this experience you just had, this waking up experience, right? Or leave behind this realization that you've had. It's more like, hey, this realization that you have should be able to give to you, right? Your ego should be able to grab onto it. Your psychological self should be able to take advantage of it, is really what every one of these messages says, is like, hey, you know, this expanded view that you've got, right? Which we might call a glimpse of true nature or, a glimpse of non-dual reality. But then like with all of us, not every one of us, right? But near 100% of all, one of the next things that happens, right, is our mind or our small self kicks in and it becomes a memory, it becomes an experience, and it becomes something that we kind of define and own and use, right? And the whole story here is reality showing up and saying, hey, you can use it this way, you can use it this way. Like psychological self, small self take this expanded view, this realization, whatever it is, and use it in this way for yourself, right? Get what you want, get money, status, power, wealth, whatever. And through that experience, right, you find out how to what degree is your true self emerging, right? And it's not something you can make happen because the self that tries to make it happen isn't the self that could be emerging. So it's more like, hey, you're gonna like, here we go. Reality's showing up, and we're finding out is now the time, right? Is now with whatever has happened before in this place in life, in this body, and whatever's come before, and what is now the time when this emerges. And in this story, it is, right? That's why it's told in the mythological way. That's why it's included, that this is the time when it emerges. But for plenty of us, we find out this isn't when it's emerging now, and we probably aren't honest with ourselves about it then too, right? Um, but with luck and everything else, if we're moving with life, if that's just happens to be what's happening at that point, then we may find ourselves also in this position and find out, oh, what when I come into contact with what is here in how reality shows up, and also in this realization, this recognition, oh, you know what? Actually, this is me moving with life is somehow become more important, or a stronger motivation, or greater inertia, right? Than all those motivations of the small psychological self were before. And hey, what comes next? Well, that's the rest of the Jesus story, right? In one version, but what comes next for you and me, we find out.